been a few days since I filmed part one of this series, where I took a .8 millimeter wire of sterling silver and pulled it down to .26 millimeters, which is as far as this plate goes. After that, yesterday, I pulled it from .245 millimeters down to .12 millimeters. And that's what I've got on this spool right here. So one more little tool on the last pull, I just ran it through the die and onto my spool with my drill. I just put a wooden bobbin, a wooden spool on here with a 1/4 inch bolt. So the secret to pulling these thin wires, there's two parts. In the first part, you have to reduce your wire size. So to get through .245 and .23, I annealed the wire and I stretched it to make it smaller, and I was able to pass it through those two holes. After that, I was no longer to use that trick of annealing and stretching the wire for two reasons. One, the wire became too brittle where I stretched it and I would break it when I tried to pull it through the die. And two, when it's annealed, it has much less tensile strength, so the wire gets weak and it's just harder to pull. So what I did to overcome that, I took my wire, I put it in my vise. I don't know if I've got, yeah, I might have a piece here. So I put it in my vise. I pulled it tight using a dowel rod. I just wrapped the dowel rod around here, and I pulled that wire tight. And then I took a piece of 800 grit sandpaper. It's very small, maybe 1 centimeter wide and 4 centimeters long. I folded it in half. I put some oil on the sandpaper. And the reason that I'm holding it tight is when you sand, if that wire's not held tight, you're just going to sand a flat spot in the wire. But by holding tension on it, I could sand about a 3-inch length of wire, and I just sanded until it broke. But as I could see it getting narrower and narrower, I sanded a smaller space so that the wire would be both smaller and tapered. Then I introduced another tool. So you buy these on Amazon. They're blunt needles. I think people use them for glue mostly. And I took that needle and I snipped the needle off, opened the opening back up where I snipped it, and that gave me this metal piece. So this is 0.9 millimeter in diameter, and it might be 0.05 or yeah, it's probably 0.05 or 0.5, sorry, in the center. So now what I do, I've got that very fragile wire that I just sanded down. I feed it into the needle. I leave just maybe 2 or 3 millimeters hanging out, and I use that to guide my wire into my die. So then when I'm in my die, all I have to do is push that wire a little more on the back of the needle, and it feeds a little more, as far as it will go, into the die. From there, I just go ahead and I pull that wire. So on my very last pull, I pulled 60 feet of wire through that needle. The needle acts as a guide, and it also acts to clean the wire, because it picks up trash from my floor or whatever, and it keeps that from getting into the die. When you get trash in the die, the wire breaks. So I got 60 feet without breaking a wire at 0.12 millimeters. So that's the secret. And now I'll just, for the rest of the video, I'll probably speed through what I shot the other day when I pulled this wire, just so you can see I really did it. And here we go. And there is a lot of tension on this wire because we're pulling, we skipped the size. So I'm going to get closer to it now just so I have less chance of it breaking. I'm going to back it up a hair. Make sure it's clean. And I'm going to pull again. So I'd say a good 20 pounds of pull. Back it up a hair. Give it another try. Try to keep it as straight as you can. But you know, we didn't have to skip a hole this time, so we should be good to go. Yep, going right through. I'm going to use my hands, a lot less tension on that wire this time. Maybe 5 pounds. Decided I'm going to anneal the wire now while I've got it. I had the end tight in the die. I was out about 40 or 50 feet, but it is really hard and it's really starting to screw up like a slinky. So I'm going to take the opportunity now, before I go to point 1.7, to anneal this wire. So I pulled the wire in the vise. I wrapped a dowel rod around it so I'd have some leverage. Pulled it tight, but not tight enough to stretch it. Wrapped a piece of sandpaper, oiled sandpaper around it, and sanded until it broke. And now I got a really nice fine wire here. The question's going to be, is it strong enough to survive a pull? But I'm going to try to pull this with my fingers. That's not working, so I'm going to use a piece of sandpaper. And I broke it. So I'm going to go to pliers now. There we go. I might have 3 pounds of pull on this wire now. Alright, I'm in the 0.313 millimeter hole. Got about a centimeter sticking out. I'm going to start working it, see if I can pull it. I'm going to go back to some parallel. Well, actually, I've got a pair of flat pliers that are not knurled, so I'm going to try that. Broke a couple millimeters. Whoa, there we go. So now the challenge is going to be all these coils. I'm going to get turned to where I can go out the door. I'm going to pull by hand. Reverse it. It's got a bunch of trash on it. Put my needle back up against it. So I added one more tool. It's a dowel or a spool I bought at Hobby Lobby. I drilled some holes, little tiny holes in it to start the wire. Put a bolt through it, put in my my drill, and away we went.